Yo, what up, brothers? What's up? It's the director. Chargers fans, we're going to be continuing our series on getting to know your rivals this week, featuring the Kansas City Chiefs. This one's going to be tough, dudes. No secret there. Guys, before we get started here, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this video. So, the Kansas City Chiefs. No secret that they won the Super Bowl last season, and it's going to be a pain to deal with this team as long as Patrick Mahomes is their starter. So we're going to have to get creative if we want to catch a win against them once again. I think one of the most exciting games in recent memory for me was the 2-point Mike Williams conversion game a couple of years ago. So much fun to see, and I'm hoping that we can at least win one game versus the Kansas City Chiefs this year. So when are we playing the Kansas City Chiefs? Starting week 2 at home, and then closing out the season in Kansas City. Definitely a tougher place to play. I'm hoping in week 2, everybody with fresh feet, maybe, minimal injuries, crossing our fingers, guys. We're an injury-prone team. I'm really hoping that we're fresh for the Kansas City Chiefs in week 2. Hoping maybe that's the week that we do catch a win versus our division rival. So breaking down the Chiefs as a team, what are the players that we do need to work or we do need to worry about, the guys that we need to scheme against? Most likely and most obvious, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. Basically, Patrick Mahomes right now is the reason why they are so lethal. It's been, I don't know if I've ever really seen a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, maybe a little bit of Steve Young. But he's definitely one of those guys that can carry a team as long as he's on the field. And what's even more concerning is that last year, with Mahomes out, the Chiefs still looks pretty lethal out there with talents like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So their offense is definitely something that we've been preparing for this offseason. Our free agent acquisitions, the way that we drafted, kind of indicate that we're preparing to take on the Chiefs, strategically. You really do need to pay attention to your division rivals. And I feel like the Chargers did a good job at bringing in new talent in order to address guys like Patrick Mahomes. So I think Kenneth Murray, our new linebacker out of Oklahoma, is definitely one of the biggest pieces we added this offseason to try and contain Patrick Mahomes. His playmaking ability, getting out of the pocket, trying to let his receivers get open. We need to minimize that, and I think a guy like Kenneth Murray is definitely going to help us out in that factor. Next up, we've got Damian Williams. Now, what's interesting is that I don't know if Damian Williams is going to remain the start for the entire season. I actually would put my money on Clyde Edwards-Helaire taking the job at some point mid-season, maybe even a little bit sooner than that. And Clyde Edwards, the more he gets playing time, the better he's going to be. Definitely one of the best running backs to come out of this draft class, and I can see him excelling again, maybe towards the middle of the season. In our first game, maybe we don't have to worry too much about him, but in the second game, I think he's going to be their featured back. And that's somebody you got to pay attention to. Not the fastest guy in the world, but definitely super scrappy, kind of a playmaker back there. So I think Clyde Edwards is going to be very, very interesting to see how he develops. I think guys like Drew Tranquill, Denzel Perryman, we're going to have to keep our eye out on this guy because we don't want him to develop into something like an Austin Eckler, which I doubt, but at the same time, he's a good talent coming out of last year's draft. Next up, wide receiver. This is where the Chiefs are the most lethal. Their receiving options are plentiful, and it's led by probably the fastest guy in the NFL that can actually catch the ball in Tyreek Hill. Absolutely lethal out there. We did pick up Chris Harris Jr. It should allow us, as far as their receiving options, for us to match it. So we can go out there with maybe Derwin James, Casey Hayward, Chris Harris. Got Desmond King out there as well, and then linebackers that are good in coverage like Drew Tranquill. So I feel like, again, the Chargers are building a team to try and counter the aggressive offense that the Kansas City Chiefs do possess. Tyreek Hill's really difficult to defend though because of his speed. So we're gonna have to get creative on how to stop him. We need to match their speed somehow on defense, and I think the Chargers have been doing a good job trying to build that. Wide receiver 2 and Sammy Watkins, decent wide receiver, definitely not as good as he has been in the past, definitely maybe a little bit injury prone, but at the same time, he's very, very decent. I would say he's in, maybe your top end wide receiver 2s in the league right now. So again, a good pair, but I think the guy I'm more worried about is maybe their wide receiver 3 and Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman's kind of like a Tyreek Hill 2.0, very, very fast, decent hands, and he adds more element of that speed to the Kansas City Chiefs offense. So the Chargers, you'll probably see a lot of nickel and dime trying to keep up with them, putting more defensive backs out there trying to match the speed that the Chiefs possess on offense. And then outside of the speed, you've got yourself with Travis Kelce, again, one of the best tight ends in the entire league matched up, especially with Patrick Mahomes. I would see a lot of Derwin James outmatched with him. I think that Derwin James versus Travis Kelce is a fun matchup to watch, but it's very evenly matched. You know, one of the best tight ends in the league versus one of the best safeties in the league. I'm hoping that Derwin James is up to the challenge. I think he will be, and I think he can definitely contain a talent like Travis Kelce. What do they look like on the offensive line? Let's start with left tackle Eric Fisher. Eric Fisher's definitely serviceable left tackle. He's not the worst in the league. He's definitely not elite, but at the same time, I think he's going to be having maybe some issue against a guy like Melvin Ingram. And if I'm the Chargers, I'm attacking the Chiefs on the left side of that line. There's a couple of suspect players out there. You know, Eric Fisher, definitely not bad, definitely not great. But then you look at a guy like Andrew Wiley, who's going to be their left guard. I think he's going to be sharing assignments versus Melvin Ingram and defensive tackle Linval Joseph. Again, it's interesting to see how the Chargers handled their offseason trying to counter their division rivals, because in our last video talking about the Denver Broncos, Linval Joseph was also a really important add against their defensive line. Once again, he's going to be a big important factor against a guy like Andrew Wiley, who in my opinion isn't one of the best left guards in the league. So that's one of the chinks in the armor that we need to pay attention to. I'm talking about chinks in the armor. Austin Reitler, I think he was backup center for the Cleveland Browns last year. I think he's their starting center this year, guys. And so that gives us an opportunity to attack that middle of the line. And again, taking a look at a signing like Linval Joseph for the Chargers, it pans out well on that matchup versus a talent like Austin Reitler, because I don't know if he's the best in the league. To me, he seems pretty average, maybe even below average. So that's the chink in the armor I see on the offensive line. Then you take a look at the right guard, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. He's actually pretty decent too. I think the Chiefs are pretty wise in beefing up that left side of the line, just because they're going to have to be dealing, or sorry, the right side of the line, because they're going to have to be dealing with guys like Von Miller and Joey Bosa in the AFC West. So Joey Bosa is going to have his work cut out for him. Jerry Tillery probably on this side of the line a lot as well. Then you also got Mitchell Schwartz on the right side of that line too, trying to contain a talent like Joey Bosa. So in my opinion, why not, line up Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram both on the left side, or I should say on the right side of our defensive line, trying to attack that weak spot of their offensive line versus Eric Fisher, Andrew Wiley, and Austin Reitler. So that's kind of my thought right there. That's one of the chinks in the armor you'll see of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now moving on to the defense, we do have a pretty good defense to go against here in the Kansas City Chiefs. Last season, they seemed pretty suspect, but they just seem to get better and better throughout every single week. So hopefully they do regress just a little bit. We'll start with left defensive end. Alex Okafor, definitely really decent, above average in my opinion. He's going to be mainly up against our left tackle, or I should say even our right tackle, actually, excuse me. And so maybe we don't see as much pressure from him, but he's definitely someone we have to pay attention to. When it comes to the defensive tackles, though, this is where I'm most worried, is Chris Jones. This is an assignment that Mike Pouncey's going to have to take a couple looks at, make sure that he's ready for, because Chris Jones really is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. Definitely proved it last season. Hopefully the Chargers are up to stopping him. So I'm going to see a lot of pressure coming from Chris Jones in the middle, and then Okafor and Frank Clark on the outside. So Chargers really need to pay attention how to protect their quarterback, whether it be Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert. Defensive tackle too, you got Derek Nandi. He's okay, again, maybe a little bit lower than average, but they still have three pretty solid guys in that line. We'll close it out with Frank Clark as the right defensive end. So very interesting. Got to pay attention to their pass rush. But when it comes to their linebackers, definitely a little bit weaker. Anthony Hitchens is okay. You take a look at Damian Williams, okay as well. But the guy that I'm kind of worried about, that I'm hoping, we're probably not going to see a lot of him in week 2 with our first matchup, but in week 17 he might be on the field a little bit more. It's going to be Willie Gay out of Mississippi. I'm pretty high on Willie Gay. I was kind of disappointed that he went to the Chiefs, because I do think he's going to develop into a very decent player. Didn't really want to see that happen out in Kansas City, but we got to pay attention to him and how he develops throughout the year, because I do think in week 17 he's going to be a factor that we're going to have to address. Next up, we're going to our cornerbacks. Gervarius Ward, definitely a decent talent. Again, I think as a whole, The safeties, the defensive backs, the cornerbacks of the Kansas City Chiefs are pretty good with a couple of standouts. But I do think against our wide receivers, Travarius Ward, going up against a guy like Keenan Allen's going to struggle a little bit. I think their defensive backs are definitely an area that we can attack. So I think through the air is the best way to attack this Kansas City Chiefs defense. Next in the slot, you got Rashad Fenton. Definitely, again, you can definitely put Keenan Allen versus him. Maybe even a KJ Hill versus Fenton. And I do think that they can win that matchup. Fenton's a little bit underwhelming. And then taking a look at their final, I should say that was their... Brashad Breeland, excuse me. This is Fenton. Brashad Breeland on the other side versus Mike Williams. Definitely going to struggle a little bit. So this is Brashad Breeland. And then Fenton in the slot. You could probably put KJ Hill versus him. Then finally at free safety, we've got Juan Thornhill, who definitely developed throughout the year. Definitely a decent free safety. But again, I think the Chargers are going to be leaning more on like a West Coast kind of attack. You know, underneath, a lot of screens, a lot of flats, a lot of, just stuff in the middle, trying to attack the Kansas City Chiefs' weak secondary without going to the third level too often. So I think Juan Thornhill, might not see too much of him, but still got to pay attention. And then finally, Tyrann Mathieu, definitely their most lethal defensive player in my opinion. I remember when he was a free agent, Keenan Allen was really pushing for him to come to the Chargers. Decided to go over to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he's a big reason that they had a pretty solid championship run last year. Definitely holding that position at strong safety, strong safety very, very well. So what do you guys think in the comment section below? For my final prediction, I'm going to say the Chargers probably get swept by the Kansas City Chiefs. Really hoping we go 1-1, but at the same time, they won the Super Bowl. We have to be realistic, and hopefully we figure something out. Maybe, all the pieces that we put together this offseason glued together very well, and we have a shot at least beating them at home. That would be huge for us to beat them, at SoFi Stadium. One of the first matchups we ever have with them in our new home. Well, guys, if you like this content, hit us up with a like and sub. Thank you so much for joining me. Bolt up. We'll see you next time, and as always, stay frosty.